the object has a resistance to change as it's traveling that way. And
Right.
it takes a larger force to overcome that resistance and have you travel in the direction of your choice.
Yes.
Do you see?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
It doesn't happen by you observing and acknowledging the impetus that it's going that way.
Yes. Yes, that's
It
a great
doesn't
example.
even
Yeah.
have, it's not even enough to know how to resist that resistance of that impetus that is inherent to that impetus. It takes you applying the energy in a direction of your choice.
Yes. And again, back to and we've talked about this on a lot of the previous episodes, the importance of the right action,
Yes.
right action for whatever it is in your life. And we've been given a challenge on each of these episodes to the listeners to ask them, what are you going to do about what you've learned today? Right? We've been talking about resisting our current circumstances. We've been talking about the awareness of being in a situation you're not happy with, those internal signals that you get. And then the other side of that is taking that right action from the right kind of teacher to understand and to know to start to move yourself in a different direction. But it starts with that right action.
So let's try something right now with all of us, mm-hmm. including the listeners. Let's say you're with yourself and you notice that life is not going as good as it could. First of all, change that to, I'm not making my life as good as it could be.
Yeah.
Because it's nothing to do with life going, it's what you're doing.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So then what do I do about that? Okay. And then, okay, come on. What is the first step or a step that you could do about that? So listener, come up within you with something right now. What could you do? So we have to fill in for them.
Yeah. So let's say we're talking about a job. Let's just use the job as an example because that's an easy one. So I'm not happy in my job. So what are some things I could do? I could start to look for another job. I could go back to school and get some different experience. I could work with a mentor, right? I could start I think if it was me that I was unhappy with my job, I'd start to look at what do I actually like about what I'm currently doing, if there's anything, and start to get to the root of what is it that I really want to do? Because maybe I'm doing something that I don't even enjoy. Maybe I want to completely shift professions.
So step by step, from what you're saying, you advocate just on a practical level, getting more fundamental. So maybe it's not the problem with the job itself. It's just not the kind of job I want to do.
Yes.
It doesn't fit me. It's not according to my inclinations, my talents, my likes and dislikes, and so on.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So, but why did I take that job if that's the case? Do you see what I mean?
Yes.
So am I in touch enough with my own signals to tell me what is a job that is adverse to me or a job that is congruent with me or advantageous to me, a job I would like? So we haven't gone through that, and ultimately go back more and more. You come back again to the tired old thing about being able to listen to yourself.
Yeah.
Then having a relationship with yourself.
Yes.
Then how to do that, and so on.
Right.
And it might be tiring to hear the truth told over and over and over again, unless you're willing to accept the truth.
Right.
And only that, if you're willing to stop suffering.
Right.
Everybody says, of course I'm willing to stop suffering. Does the evidence evidence of your life show so?
Yeah. No, for most it does not. No.
So there's no of course about that.
Right. And I think that's so, as we talk about.
What I'm doing now is very annoying to people who want to hang on to what they're accustomed to, the suffering they're accustomed to. They find this very annoying, the way I talk about these things. But I am more loyal to those people than they are to themselves.
Yes.
By those people, I mean the ones who refuse to stop suffering.
Yes. And we're going to keep talking about it because because that's what we do. And if it's annoying, if it's bringing some negative emotion like that, there's something that needs to be paid attention to. But as you said, you're more loyal to them than they are to be willing to have these conversations.
I have an idea. So if you're really frustrated by what we're saying here and so on, why don't you write to us about that? Comment and give, even writing down what frustrates you might do something for you.
Yeah. That's
But
an action.
Send it to us. Send it to us.
Yeah, that's an action you could take. Because again, we've been asking the listeners, what are you currently doing about what you hear in these episodes? And so even if you don't agree with us, we still want to hear from you, because we want to hear, as Erhard said, if you write that down and what frustrates you about this, what annoys you about this, why do you think it wouldn't work for you? Even getting that out and maybe even reading back what you wrote, maybe you don't believe what you actually thought. Right? Maybe you just took the action of actually getting it out to understand that.
Or maybe you write it down in such a convincing way that I will agree with you. Then you're really in trouble.
Yes. So we've been talking today about resisting our current circumstances. And we've talked about really that awareness of those internal signals that we get. And we started at the beginning of this conversation, really reminding everybody listening, including me, even though I host the show every week, these are great reminders for me. And I feel like Erhard is there's little nuances each episode that we have that I still am learning to correct in my own mind. But we've been talking about how to actually experience ourselves and how to actually be engaged with ourselves enough to respond to those internal signals. And again, a reminder on every episode here to value ourselves enough to be willing to do this inner work. And so talking about this topic of resisting our current circumstances, and sometimes we're fighting where we currently are, and there's this internal chaos that we have going on. And from that, we then try to build something, but we're in the chaos that we haven't even recognized is actually chaos. So being aware of that state of being unhappy, and then taking the right action after that, the key, as Erhard had explained earlier, from the right teacher taking the right action. And so my question to the listeners is, what are you doing about this? What are you doing about it in your own life? What are your thoughts? We would love to hear from you if you agree with us or you don't. Just that action of writing it out, as we said, is important, and we want to hear from you.
Yeah. By the way, that reminds me, some of the questions and comments we received in the past week, maybe we could address some of them.
Yeah. So there was a question about, well, it kind of all ties into what we were talking about today, but acting from this place when we're not in accordance to who we are. And I think you've covered, you did kind of talk through some of that, but this acting in accordance of we're not acting in accordance of who we are. And to me, this almost also feels like we're fighting our own story, right? We want our story to be something different. So we're fighting what the current story is. But when we're acting in this way, again, and we're resisting where we are, we're not, as you said and explained earlier, we're not coming from that. We're not in that alignment with ourselves to act from that place where we're acting as one unit. We're acting as if we're in a separate unit from our mind and our body and our emotions, right?
Yeah, right.
And that separation that we feel is, again, as we've talked about so many times, that root of that suffering that we say we all want, yet we're not willing to make that change within ourselves to end our own suffering.
Well, one modification I would make to that point, the first point, is acting in accord, not just with who we are, but what we know about who we are. Right? Because that makes it more immediate. There are certain things that life has told you about yourself all your life.
Yeah.
If you've listened to the last few episodes, or all of the episodes between Sloan and me, we have discussed about knowing the being that you are and what that being is quite extensively. Mm-hmm. So you could have a lot of knowledge that is different from what most people have, but real knowledge, deep knowledge about who you are. And if you need more knowledge, you know what? Get it.
Right. take the action, right?
Yes.
Take
Again,
the action.
right. Exactly. Yeah.
Let's see. Another question that we had was, let's talk just a little bit about how the mind works for us and against us. That was another question we got about, and I think that can tie in, especially when we're in this state of resistance, right? Because it's easy. You talked about that momentum of going one way, and our mind just gets on board with that, right? And it'll just sail us to the end of time in that mindset. But
So let
having
me answer that. So, because I know where you're going with all of this. Our mind is the coordinator of all of our instruments of perception and self-expression, our actions. So by that, I mean, our mind is a coordinator of our feelings, our emotions, our senses, our intellect and intuition. They're all instruments through which we do our life and experience our life, right?
yes. Mm-hmm.
So if mind, imagine now mind being aware of itself, being the coordinator of all of these, and having the position and the privilege of bringing the experiences that the feelings have, the emotions have, and so on, gathering them in a focused way, and then reflecting those experiences of life and of being to us, who is the being, who's being, right?
Right.
So
Yes.
reflecting that. Then you would have a very powerful, harmonious, functional life, because you're all informed about what is advantageous to you and what is harmful to you.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
However, most people's mind is not focused on that. It's not focused on anything except what it is involved in at the moment.
Yes.
Be it a thought of that mountaintop over there, or the trees over there, or look at that bird, or my dog, or I got to feed myself, I got to go to work pretty soon, this and this and that. The mind jumps from one object to another, to another, to another. That's all well described in my books, especially in Journey into Your Center. It's the most fundamental book of instructions. So anyway, so that's there. So that's the different ways. Most people's mind is not focused on serving you. It's just running around all over the place.
Right.
And it is dissatisfied and frustrated with that, because the mind is formed for the function of reflecting your experience of being to yourself. Because that's the most important thing, that you are. If you weren't being, none of this would have any point whatsoever. So it's the fundamental. How can you be fulfilled if you disregard being aware of the fundamental of your life?
Yeah. Yeah.
And the experience of being, and then the expression of the being that you experience, that is the main reason for you to be in this human life with all these wonderful instruments that you have. They're not just like a cabbage head who's stuck in the ground and maybe responds a little bit to the sun or the amount of water in the soil. No, we have much more potential, though some people insist on living like a cabbage head and wilting accordingly.
They do. And it's, the world can be a terrible place and a beautiful place at the same time. And if you're the cabbage head focusing on the terrible side and not willing to use these tools and instruments that we have to live a beautiful life, then I guess that's your choice. But everyone has a choice in the matter. And our goal with these conversations and the purpose of why I do this show is to help people to understand that beautiful side of life, and that they have a say in it. They have control. There's things that they can do. And, I think that, so that example of the cabbage head always makes me laugh when you say that. It's a funny visual to think about. But
while you're talking, what just occurs to me, Sloan, is that you're talking about the things that we know and so on. All the things that you and I are talking about are nothing new. We're not making this up.
Right.
That's always been that way. And almost every individual has had glimpses of that in their life. maybe of most of the things that we're talking about,
Mm-hmm.
but they have either